Good afternoon, everybody, or for morning, those of you out there watching this on the West Coast. And for those of you listening on the podcast, thanks as always. This is JBarrows with Make It Happen Mondays. And since we didn't have a Facebook Live session on the group last week, we usually do, for those of you who don't know, on the Make It Happen group on Facebook Live. For just people who are in that group, we do a Friday happy hour where Morgan and I get together from 4 to 5 o'clock East Coast time. And we answer all the questions that were in the community that we weren't able to get to, and also open it up for live discussion for anybody who has questions. So it's almost like office hours. So for those of you who are out there looking for some live coaching, do not hesitate to join us 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock every Friday. But last Friday we couldn't do it because both Morgan and I were pretty busy with a bunch of other stuff. So I'm having Morgan come on Make It Happen Monday, which hasn't been a while. It's been a little while for this one specifically. So what's going on, Morgan? How you been?
Doing good, John.
Crushing it. And I wanted to bring Morgan on for one very specific reason. So for those of you who've been following us, you know, Morgan, when'd you come on board? October last year?
Oh, yeah, October 15th.
Okay, so October 15th. And we kind of put together a ramp schedule to get Morgan out there. He's obviously, you know, executing and selling. That's why we came up with his title as Director of Sales Execution, but also Evolution. Right. So he's executing on sales to drive revenue for JBarrows, but he's also getting out there to go deliver, because that's one of the main goals, is to get Morgan out there to deliver so I can kind of stop being on the road 100% of the time and work a little bit more on the business here. And we're at that point where last week Morgan did his first half-day session without me being there. And then tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's your first full-day session?
Tomorrow's first full-day session, yeah.
Awesome. So we're going through this progression, and one of the things that we wanted to hone in on with this podcast right here, with this Make It Happen Monday, is how critical preparation is. Because I remember, Morgan, when we did a half-day session, what was it, like a month ago, where you came out with me, and I kind of did the driving to close stuff, and then you took over the fill in the funnel. Mm-hmm. And it went well, right? But you kind of felt a little like, you know, choppy. And I mean, the feedback from you was like, yeah, it felt okay, but, right? And it was because I kind of was like, okay, here's the slide deck. You've watched me a couple of times now, get up and see what happens. And I was there to help kind of fill in the blanks, right? But it went okay from your perspective, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was all right, yeah.
But then let's talk about your prep for going out there and doing it on your own, and kind of the process we went through, and then the difference that it made. So why don't you share with people kind of how you got to where you got to last week, and the result of what happened last week?
Yeah, so big thing is, you know, I've done half-day sessions before, but not with the slides and without any backup or references from the online portal that we have. So this was me, hey, I'm coming with the slides, I'm going to do the presentation, standing up there the entire time and going through everything. And the difference in the one last Friday was the fact that we took the time to actually prepare and go through each slide together. So John and I went through the slides from a full day perspective. We went through every single one. It's probably a 2 hours and a half, 3 hour conversation. We went through every single one and detailed what examples I need to talk about, the things that I need to dive more deeper into, and other slides and other examples that I can run through to make sure everyone's getting the most value out of the training. And when we brought that out, and then I looked over the material, went over the examples myself, printed out the slides so I could look at them if I'm on the move or in the middle of transit, I've actually was able to profess my message a lot better, and I felt more confident. And because I felt more confident, I was willing to engage more, and I could flow through the slides, and it almost felt like that was part of the training, and it wasn't like I was making things up along the way.
Love it, man. And I think that's the key, and the message that I want to make sure that everybody who's listening to this or is engaged in What's Up, Rock? It's Rock. Hey, what's up, Rock? But for everybody who's listening to this right now, is how the difference between prep and non-prep is literally night and day when it comes to presenting, meeting with clients, or any of that stuff. So, you know, let's translate this now to everybody else who's going through the day-to-day from a meeting standpoint, right? I mean, you've been on meetings. We've all been on meetings where we kind of just showed up and we asked our basic questions, right? Like, you know, I call them the doctor checkup questions, the stuff you have to ask. You know, for us, it's how many sales reps do you have? How many SDRs versus BDRs? What's your average deal size? Those type of things. But you've also gone on to meetings where you've gone on their website, you've looked at their business, you've asked. And do you have any examples of when the difference between when you prepped for a meeting and how you, like, walk people through how you prep for meetings And then the difference between the ones where you just feel like you're kind of going through the motions because you got a lot going on that day and you just didn't get a chance. So could you walk people through kind of like how you prep for a meeting with a client, like that's scheduled on the calendar, like not necessarily a cold call, but a meeting that you have, like a qual call scheduled where you're going to talk about our solution and that type of thing? What's your process that you go through?
Yeah, so from a qualifications call standpoint, I'm going to the website. I look at case studies. I look at also Aller. I put the company in Aller, and they have just a brief background, what other competitors that what they're facing against. And then also additionally, I'll do a quick look at someone's LinkedIn profile to see, is there someone else they're connected with that I know really well? What are their interests? What previous companies they were at? I think that's really key because it could be like, wait, you were at a company 2 years ago, and that is actually a client of ours. So those are things that I try to pick apart in piece. And then I also try to see who they might directly report to, just so I have that name and reference when they say, oh, I have to go to my boss, who's the CFO or the CMO or the CEO. At least I have a frame of reference to be like, oh, yeah, I know that's Sally or I know that's Bob. So those are ways that I prepare before the call and just making sure that I understand how many products that they're selling and what they're about to do. From an initial standpoint, I try to drive all the insights I can from that website additionally. And the reason that it goes really well is I've had a lot of, especially executives, when I send them the shared agenda before a call, they're super excited about it because they're like, oh, yes, like this is exactly what I tell my reps to do. And now they know this is going to be a good call because I've sent them at least something to go into with the frame of reference. And we don't really get off track. We get exactly where we need to go. Now, if it's a meeting where, like John said, there's a lot of stuff going on, which has happened to me before, I sometimes may forget this in the agenda or I just didn't have enough time. And the call goes well, but it goes all over the place and we don't really get to next steps, but it could have been a lot better. And I don't get questions that I wanted answered. So having that agenda allows you to be like, okay, I sent this to you and now we have a guiding conversation. And it also allows you to not look. It doesn't make you look like you don't know what's going on when you ask, what are the 1 or 2 things you want to get this call today? Because if you don't send an agenda and you ask that, it seems like you actually haven't done any homework and you're going to basically ostracize yourself. And you don't want that.
Yeah, I love it, man. And so for those of you, just tactically, right, what Morgan talks about is we have a checklist for, you go through your checklist before every meeting. And I recommend everybody putting together a checklist, a very simple one too. It doesn't have to be too intense, but just like Morgan said, you look at their LinkedIn profile, you look at their website, look at any news and events, you open up Owl or look at who their competition is, that type of stuff. And then ideally you come up with like 2 or 3 questions that are very relevant to that account and that person based on the homework that you do, right? So it's not, I get the doctor checkup questions. We need to know those, but I like to come up with at least 2 or 3 that show that I've done my homework, right? And then another recommendation here, and this actually, you use a specific tool for this. I just use a template. But the other recommendation we have is to literally structure the way you take your notes, right? So like literally, I actually have a template that I use in Evernote that I cut and paste, and it's like company about us. So I can literally look up and say, okay, what do they do? So I, don't have to bounce to their website. LinkedIn profiles on everybody. What source was an inbound or a cold call? And then what are my goals for the meeting? What's the agenda, right? Mm-hmm. And I have that so that I can just be very systematic. Now, what tool do you use to do that again?
Costello.
And you still liking it?
I love it. It makes it easy for me. I can bounce around and it's guided by the process of what are their buying triggers? Like, what are the next steps? Like, it has all planned out for me. So I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm not lost. And it makes the calls just easier for me.
Love it. Yeah. And I think anything that'll help you stay structured in the conversation so you're not all over the place, which is that big thing, which I'm a huge believer, as you know, of that agenda, that shared agenda. So that's actually one of my favorite nuggets out of all this training is when you have a meeting coming up the next day, and instead of sending an email, and this is for everybody else listening, instead of sending an email saying, hey, are we still on for tomorrow? I'll send you an email saying, hey, I'm looking forward to our meeting tomorrow. In order to get the most out of our time together, I put together a few points here I wanted to make sure that we cover. What else do you want to make sure that we add, right? And we put 3 bullet points in there of what we want to talk about that shows you've done your homework. And then you leave 3 bullet points blank, effectively telling them fill in the blanks. And to your point, Morgan, do you notice a difference between the clients that respond to that versus the ones that don't?
Respond to the shared agenda?
Yeah. Like as far as the quality of the conversation?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I think you meant like responding to the email. Yes, the quality of the conversation is definitely better because most people don't respond, but they'll be like, "I saw it,"
Yeah.
and so now they are. I would believe. I don't think they haven't told me this, but I would believe they've actually come more prepared to have the conversation about that. Because in anyone who's listening, and you're in a meeting and you're going into it, and you don't really know what's going to happen. Your brain's all over the place. So especially with every other meeting that you had, you're kind of like trying to figure out for the first 5 to 10 minutes, what am I actually here for? So that agenda allows for like, as soon as the conversation starts, we know why we're here and it's not a confusion.
And that's the key. Cause I mean, if you look at my schedule, I mean, I showed you my schedule today. It's literally like every half hour until 6 o'clock. Like right after we got to end this exactly at 1 o'clock. Cause I got a 1 o'clock, a 1:30, you know, that type of thing. So I don't have a lot of time, and some of them are clients and some of them are prospects and some of them are partners. And I will tell you right now, without an agenda, if a partner has a meeting with me and it's without an agenda, I literally get on the call and I'm like, all right, what are we here to talk about? Like what? And we waste the first 5 to 10 minutes of the conversation figuring out what, reminding me. Whereas if I had it in the agenda and I would have just opened up that meeting invitation, be like, boom, 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 and here's a link to our website or something like that. I was like, oh, cool, here we are, let's talk. Yeah. So it's the same thing with executives, right? You know, I wrote a post a little while ago called "Executives Like Children. They Need Structure." Right? If you don't have structure, they tend to fall apart, or they tend to be all over the place with the conversation. And that's both working with an executive, like having a call with an executive, and also bringing an executive with you. Yep. Like we've talked about this. Like if you want, I've been on a few calls with you, right, where you've pulled me in to talk to the client. And without you telling me, without you giving me some instruction as far as, John, this is what my goal is. Here's the agenda. Here's what I need you to talk about. I mean, you know me, man, and I've done this before. I've pretty much taken over the conversation, right?
But that happened in a sense, though, where I did tell you what was going to happen, but then it didn't happen, and we both got blindsided.
Right. And you have to adjust, right?
So definitely make sure that if you do that, and someone ends up taking a call that's your boss, your leader, like understand that like that's situational. Because it happened on one call, because I was like, I don't know what is going on, because we both weren't expecting it.
Right. Well, and I did the same thing to you. I brought you on the call with certain expectations for the client when I'm talking. It was like, I'm like slacking you, being like, dude, sorry about this. This is so off topic. I have no idea what this dude's doing right now. Yeah. So there's only so much you can do to control it. But at least if you put those parameters in place, you have something to fall back on. Right. Yeah. So if it does go off topic, you can be like, hey, I'm sorry. I was not prepared for this part of the conversation. Like I sent you an agenda yesterday of what I was expecting out of this call. I know you probably didn't see it, but can we reschedule this call? Because I'm really not prepared to have this conversation. I didn't come with the info or the, that type of stuff. So maybe like let's gather a little bit more intel of what you're looking for, and let's circle back maybe in a week or so or something. Yeah. So with that approach, by the way, where you have a checklist, you send an agenda beforehand, and then small nuanced tactical things here, everybody. So I send the email out usually around noontime the day before the meeting. Right, to give them a chance to respond to it. Yeah. Even if they do or don't, doesn't matter. Well, it does, but what I'll do is the morning of the meeting, I will then update the meeting invitation with the agenda in there. Don't put the agenda in the original meeting invitation. Nobody looks at it. But if you update it the morning of and there's no time change, then the person's forced to be like, well, what's the update here? And then they see the agenda. And then you start the conversation off with, hey, thanks so much for your time. 30 minutes still, great. Well, I'm sure you probably didn't see the agenda. Here's a few things, build it together, then go through it, right? So have you had it? Because I know you're really getting into, meetings and moving from the SDR manager to really now the closing role here at JBarrows is effectively an AE. Have you been part of meetings yet where either you can tell that the client, they kick off, well, let me tell you a little background on us, and you almost feel awkward because you already know their background? Have you had that happen so far?
That's happened, and sometimes I'll just cut to the chase and be like, hey, because they'll ask, hey, do you need a background? I'm like, no, I know this, and this, you sell this, let's hop into it. A lot of people normally don't do that, which is cool with me because I've already done my research, and that's, again, it's time. That's 5 to 10 minutes of you telling me the background of something that's probably great, but I can go look that up on your website. So we're here to have a conversation of things I can't find out on the website.
Yeah. And that it's funny because I can tell how bad we are as the sales profession in general, and how many sales reps just go through the motion without doing any real prep on a meeting. Because I still get that to this day where a client was like, all right, well, John, let me get a little background on us. And I have to politely interrupt them and be like, look, I appreciate it. I know when you were founded. I know what your company does. I know who your target audience is. You know, I do have some qualifying questions around your background and your history and your direction, but we can skip this part. And you can literally almost hear like the almost the relief because they're like, oh wait, we can have a real conversation instead of a sales rep just asking me their bant questions and that type of thing. Yeah. So there's that, and then you're in a good conversation. And I don't know if this is happening yet, but it's happened to me. Not all the time, but it frequently, where they say, wow, you've done your homework. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Where somebody literally like almost interrupts you as you're talking to them, and you say, whoa, you've done your homework. And when that happens, you got them, because you're getting them out of their typical day-to-day sales rep. Yeah. Okay. I'm actually really looking forward to this one. And I'm going to preface a podcast that we're going to have coming up here on Make It Happen Monday. I think it's going to be, where is this? It is on 7/16. So July 16th, the Monday. Oh crap. No, I can't do that one. Can't do that. It's 7/9. No, it's actually the 9th. Yeah. So July 9th with Armin over at Drift, because he said something that kind of really got my brain almost working overdrive, which is, he's the VP of sales at Drift, and he talks about how we do certain things that put customers into the, like, all of a sudden it triggers a response from a customer, in the sense that as soon as we start saying, like, for instance, if we're doing a face-to-face meeting and I would open up my laptop for the presentation, that triggers to the client that, oh, now it's my time to shut up and listen to said sales rep's presentation and not engage, right? It's the same thing when we talk about how we introduce ourselves over the phone. When you say, hi, this is John Barrows from JBarrows Consulting, when somebody picks up the phone, it's an automatic trigger to be like, this is a sales call. How can I get out? So we want to pattern interrupt that, right? By saying, hey, thanks for taking my call. Do you have a couple of minutes? And now it's, right, what's this about, right? Yeah. So I think that's a lot of what we want to do here is interrupt the pattern of bad sales professionals who continue to drone through PowerPoint presentations, ask basic questions. And that preparation, even as small as it might be, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it makes a world of difference for the conversation, right?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Or the training. There's a couple of questions. Lucas actually brings us one. Do you set aside time each day to tackle email? What's your approach on tackling email? Do you kind of do it throughout the day, or do you set aside time to go after emails?
I do it throughout the day, because what I've realized is I'm massively ADD, and sometimes in my head I feel like I respond to an email and then I look back and I didn't. So I try to, if it's important, I try to tackle it as immediately as possible. If I am on the move or there's something else I need to do, I'll wait and try to tackle it towards the end of the day. But it really depends on where I'm at, where I'm going, and what's going on. So there's obviously, like, our travel schedule and the way that we operate is probably different than most salespeople that are in the office and they're in the routine. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, I'll tie this back to the preparation, kind of the topic here of I'd rather, email can wait. Any email can wait unless it's a super high priority. Look, we're not, I always say we're not emergency room doctors here. You know what I mean? Like, we're selling shit. So pretty much anything can wait until the end of the day. So that's, I'd actually defer to prep for a client more than I would to respond to an email from a client. So for instance, today, with all my meetings back to back to back to back, yeah, there's a bunch of emails in my inbox right now that I could respond to right now, but I need to make sure that I prep for the next call. So that's why having that checklist and going through that to me is a higher priority than looking at emails. And I'm a zero inbox guy. Not everybody's like that, but I'll usually start at the bottom and move my way up. But that said, I use the different flags as far as priority. I need to respond to this one today. Everybody else can wait. But, with the theme of preparation today, I usually do all my prep for the next day the night before. So for instance, last night I was going through my checklist for all my meetings today. right? Because I knew I had a bananas day today, and I'm not going to have time. I mean, we're going to end this here in 10 minutes. I'm not going to have time to all of a sudden jump on that website, figure out who that person is, understand what my questions are. I'm going to have to jump right into that call. And if I haven't done my prep, then I'm your typical piece of shit sales rep that's like, so tell me about your business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, and I lose a lot of credit. I think I lose a lot of credibility by taking that approach and not being present in the meeting, be able to have a good conversation because I forgot the prep. So what other examples have you seen in from a prep standpoint where it's helped you, or some of the things that you're working with reps right now to prep the right way? Are there any other nuanced things that you do to give you that edge when you prep?
I think another thing that you can do is go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator and go to the company, and you can see who's been mentioned in the past 30 days. So you can kind of see who in the news is being talked about. Is there a quote that you can grab from a C-suite? That's something I'm doing. If it's an account, if I have time to do that, that's obviously a little bit more time to do. So I'll do something that as well. Additionally, I'll try to see if there's anything on YouTube or someone's on a podcast that I can use as a frame of reference to be in the conversation. But the things I mentioned before are the main things that I do before I hop on a call. And that's just for time's sake. And you're going to get a lot of high value. Obviously, as the conversation evolves and you get more integrated into the sales process, there's a ton of other things that you can do. Nudge is there. You can use Aller again, feed lead. If they said they're interested in this type of topic, you can send it over. So those are things you can do after the sales cycle has begun. But that qualification call, there's definitely a lot of things you can do of that nature.
And I think we do a lot of stuff where, you know, having those. So we talk about small talk, right? And a lot of reps like to build the rapport at the beginning of the conversation. They talk about the sports, the weather, you know, that type of stuff, which is fine if it's directly relevant. Like if you're calling into, you know, California, congrats, you know, on the Warriors type of thing, fine. Or see, hey, Ovechkin, that was cool. But, you know, it better be super timely or super relevant, because a lot of times it comes off as disingenuous in the sense that, you know, if I see a rep trying to build rapport with me of something that is just like, yeah, okay, fine. And I almost roll my eyes at it. You know, I'm like, yeah, anyways.
Like if a rep said, congratulations on the Super Bowl like 2 years ago.
Yeah, or like, hey, John, I see you went to the University of Maryland. You know, what'd you think? I'd be like, dude, you know, that was fucking 20 years ago. Like, yeah, go Terps, whatever. Why are we here to talk? But what I think is a better way of creating small talk and building rapport is based on the research that you've done for that account to prep for that meeting, right? Yeah. I'll even say to people, hey, in preparation for our meeting today, you know, I was actually looking at your website and I noticed this article where it talked about how you're scaling or growing or doing whatever. You know, before we really get into the sales training side, help me understand, like, why are you guys going into those markets, or what helped get you to that level, or whatever it is, because I'm genuinely curious about that. That, to me, way better small talk and rapport building, because it reinforces the prep you've done for that meeting, and it kind of shows that person, hey, you better be ready for this conversation because I'm coming with fire, as opposed to just going through my typical. Right. And one more thing, have you, so you've gotten a bunch of the meeting efficiency surveys that we do for the meetings that you have, right?
Yep.
Okay. How helpful have those been as far as skipping some steps?
Extremely helpful. I was on a panel last week and I told everyone that's something that they need to look into. It cuts off the checkup questions I don't have to go through, and I can just hop right into it. And those conversations end up being better because we don't have to talk about how many reps you have, like what are you looking to do, like what are some the ACV, the contract value, like all that's already answered. So we don't have to hop in the numbers of things. We can hop into like the strategic value prop of this training, and also like how this is going to help you in the long term.
Yeah. And so for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, and by the way, I want some of your feedback too on what else we should put in there that's not overly, you know, asking too much, but it's stuff that's, again, oh, you know what, we could just ask that question. And for those listening or on the Facebook Live right now or listening on the podcast, highly recommend considering this. It's called the Meeting Efficiency Survey. And what it is client fills out said form on website, right, with the basics, their name, their company, whatever, and what they're looking for. What we do then is we send them an email with the agenda, hey, looking forward, or no, with a link to our calendar, right? Hey, pick a time. And then also, hey, if you have a few extra minutes, if you could fill out this meeting efficiency survey. And what it It's a bunch of, you could do this through SurveyMonkey, any type of free software, PollDaddy, any of that stuff. And it's just check off drop down lists. Like, you don't fill in the blanks. You're not asking the client to write anything. You're asking them to just check off boxes. And for us, like Morgan said, what's your average deal size? What's your current conversion ratios? How many sales reps do you have? How many SDRs? How many BDRs? What's your sales cycle length? What's your, those type of things.
Yep. Stuff
that we call doctor checkup questions, the stuff that you need to know, but are kind of the part of the conversation. You know what I mean? They're like, I always felt like that was I'd be in a really cool conversation with somebody and I'd be like, oh yeah, by the way, I got to ask you these 5 questions that just suck. I mean, they don't suck, but they're just, anyways. Yeah. So we send that to them. They fill that out. So we now have that intel before going into that meeting, and we could skip that whole step. So you could even do this with SDRs and AE handoff, right? Because a lot of times, depending on how much the SDR qualifies the account, sometimes they qualify at a very basic level. And then it gets flipped to the AE, and the AE is kind of frustrated because this isn't a qualified opportunity, or it's kind of a bullshit meeting.
Yeah, they don't want that.
Meeting efficiency survey as an AE. Hey, I'm looking forward. Thanks so much, Morgan, for setting us up this meeting. Hey, said client, I'm super excited to, for our conversation coming up here. If you could take 2 seconds to fill out this meeting efficiency survey, it'll really help me prepare. And again, same thing with the agenda, like you said earlier. The people that respond to that agenda, meetings go much better and they're more engaged. Same thing with the meeting efficiency survey. You'll find that the people who take the time to fill that out, those conversations obviously go way better than the people that don't.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Any other things, any other tips on the to finish up here, because we got about 2 minutes left. Any other things on preparation and stuff that people listening here could take away, or just some tactics, techniques, or just an overall thought process on preparation that we should leave them with here?
Yeah, I think every single great person that you follow or you admire does preparation. I think the only person who says they don't prepare is Gary, but Gary is an anomaly.
Yeah,
he's a unique case. So like, don't listen to him in that regard. But for everyone else, like Tony Robbins, obviously he's probably one of the number 1 speakers in the world. Like, he does over prepares for every talk that he does. Obviously I respect him, but I hate his team. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, they're all, even if you don't like him, LeBron, same way. So they all over prepare and they know exactly what's going on. And Draymond Green, from a defensive standpoint, he knows all the schemes in the NBA. Most people don't know that, but that's the reason why they're doing really well at what they do. They over prepare and they try to figure out how they can get better each time. So for me, I was a person that normally doesn't like preparing for things. But as I've grown in my career and as I've just grown from a business acumen standpoint, I've realized that preparing for the activities that you could already be good at, you can actually be phenomenal and great if you just take the time to prepare and do the due diligence of putting yourself in a good spot.
Love it, man. And I'll make one last point on this. Let's put it this way. The most valuable asset anybody has is time.
Yeah.
It's the one thing you can't get back. So by not preparing for meetings, you are completely disrespecting the person's time that you are asking for. By preparing for it, you're showing at least some level of respect, and it will go a long way as far as engaging and everything else. All right. Cool. All right, everybody. Well, we're tying things up here. This week, actually, we're going to have, I'm going to promo this too on the Friday afternoon happy hour. We missed it last week because both Morgan and I were busy. This week, I'm actually going to my nephew's graduation. So I'm going to be out in California, so I won't be able to do it. So we are going to have a very special guest on Friday with Morgan to chat about some of the challenges and answer some of the questions. So please join us. Join the Make It Happen group. You got to go to the Facebook page, Facebook/JBarrows, and then look for the Make It Happen group there. We answer tons of questions, high engagement. A lot of the reps who have actually gone through the training are in there answering questions, asking questions. So really good engagement there, having a blast doing it. So join us on Friday. I won't be there, but Morgan's going to run it. It's going to be fire, all right?
Yep.
All right, everybody. You all have a fantastic week. Make it happen, Morgan.
Keep dialing. Keep it easy, guys.
Later.